Looking to make some healthier habits this holiday season? Make sure to check out our Moving Through Midlife community over on Facebook, as we are doing a Planksgiving event where we are doing daily plank workouts. We will be doing an advent for healthy, happy hips this holiday season, and then also have a sugar challenge, a 2 week sugar challenge that you might be interested in. Happy holidays!
Welcome to Raising Healthy Humans, a podcast created for busy moms, where you can easily find info on health and wellness for your family. Join Courtney, a health coach, movement and posture specialist, and founder of FormFit, an active and supportive community where she helps busy moms move more. Here on Raising Healthy Humans podcast, she shares personal life experiences, training, knowledge, and conversations with other health and wellness experts so you can raise healthy humans.
I am honored to be sharing this episode with you today, as the person I am interviewing is someone I listened to for years when I first got into listening to podcasts. She has since moved on, as the business she had successfully run was no longer working for her and the life she wanted with family. While taking time and getting quiet, she was led to the business she has today. Today, I speak with Katie Krimitsos, the founder of the Women's Meditation Network, to discuss her journey and the importance of practicing meditation. Hi, Katie. How are you today?
Hey, Courtney. I'm so good. It's so good to see you.
Nice meeting you. I'm excited to have you on here today. You work You're the founder of Women's Meditation Network, correct? Can
Yeah.
you tell me how you got started with that?
Yeah. It's a really fun story, actually. So I have been a podcaster since 2014. And back then I had a podcast called Biz Women Rock,
Which
which
I loved. And
I know, I was so
yes.
excited. You were like, oh my God, I used to listen all the time. Which helped women entrepreneurs grow their companies very intentionally. And I loved it. And it gave birth to a business that allowed me to do strategic coaching for these women. I did masterminds, I had courses, I had memberships. I mean, it was that whole thing. And I
Mhm.
loved it. And it was amazing. And in 2018, in April of 2018, I found out we were pregnant with our second daughter. And I know every mama listening this has happened when she got pregnant. Something immediately changes. Like maybe it's your taste buds, maybe it's that all of a sudden you don't want to do this, or all of a sudden this, doesn't feel good anymore. Like something just immediately within like a breath completely changes. For me, that was a really deep knowing that I did not want that business anymore. I didn't want the
Mm.
podcast. I didn't want the business. I knew it just that whole season, it was done. I was like, I'm done with this, which was a very, very scary thought because I was, 3 days before I was loving it in the juice. Like I'm in it. Right. And I had been building it for many years at that point. So, it was very scary. And basically what I did is I kind of like took a couple of weeks to just kind of like do the bare minimum in my business,
Mhm.
not push anything. And I promised myself I wouldn't launch anything. And I'm like, let me just sit with this very uncomfortable thing and figure out what's going on. And in that time, I just sort of unpacked like, okay, like, am I saying this because I'm self-sabotaging, or am I saying this because I really don't want it? Like, what's actually here? I
Mhm.
could totally make this work, or no, I don't. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, let it all go. So, anyway, in that space, the seed for the Women's Meditation Network was really planted. It was an idea that I'd had months prior and just didn't ever act on it because it really didn't fit into the business model at that time. And now here I was sort of like resurfacing that idea and going like, well, what could this be? If I'm not doing this, could I do this? And what could it be? And it was a really interesting time for me in that, I have no credentials that legitimize why I should be doing what I'm doing. Like I don't
Okay.
have any meditation credentials. I have been meditating. I've been a practitioner of meditation since I was 19 years old. I'm 44 now. And, but, like I've never officially like guided a lot of people in meditation. I've never gone to like a meditation school. Like I'm not certified in anything. And so, but I'm a writer and I knew that I had things to say to women and I knew that I could have my experience coaching women. I understood, and I know you work with a lot of mamas too. I know you work with a lot of women. So what ended up happening, they would be coming to me for business stuff,
Mhm.
but 60 to 70% of what we were dealing with was really the internal sense of self. And that's sort of the stuff that we always needed to work on in order for the practical business stuff to actually do what they wanted it to do. And so there was just so much that I felt like I had to say to women about, you've got this. You already have everything in you that you know. Like, you are extraordinary the way that you are. There's no one else like you. Like all these really affirming, kind of like, this is the reality of what it means to be you and to
Right.
own that and to shine through. Anyway, so I just started writing these scripts and I knew if I could show up to the mic, speak it as a meditation, create this beautiful musical experience behind it. I knew that that could be really powerful. And so I was brave enough to just start with my first podcast, which was called Meditation for Women back in the summer of 2018. Um, and for about a year and a half, I sort of balanced both. I still had the Biz Women Rock business, and I eventually kind of like let that go I had my second baby and sort of was growing the meditation podcast. And then here we are 5 years later, and I now have 14 podcasts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, they are not all they're managed by you, is that and then you've pulled different people within?
So, let me see. Out of those 14, 3 of them, I'll kind of do a breakdown. 3 of them are just sounds based. And so there's no actual like person voice guidance. I mean, I'm always at the beginning, like welcoming everyone, but there's no actual guidance there.
Okay.
And then, um, so that brings us down to 11. And then there are then 2 others that have different guides.
Mhm.
So they're owned by my network, and these are women who are showing up and contributing their genius and their gifts to that. That's healing meditation for women and daily affirmations.
Okay.
But the rest of them are all me. They're all
Okay.
me. So yeah.
And you had mentioned that you were working with these business women, and I see this myself with fitness, is you have to go deeper with everything. It's
Always.
not what you can't get these health goals that you're looking for until we get to who you are and what is holding you back.
Right.
So I completely love what you're doing with the meditation network. Did you find that is this kind of how you got through everything for yourself to determine that this is definitely what I want to do when you closed down the other business?
Meaning is meditation sort of one of the
Meditation, yeah, were you
yeah.
going
It's
through
it's
meditation for yourself?
it's one of the biggest tools that I use. Meditation, journaling, being out in nature, exercising, like these are all really big parts of my life.
Okay,
And I kind of cycle through them. So sometimes I'm in a phase where I'm meditating all the time every day and feels really good, but then sometimes I'm not meditating that much as far as like the formality of it. They're more sort of like mini moments of mindfulness, if you will.
right,
But all of those things are sort of tools that I have that ultimately get me to that voice that guides me to the next step, right? The next best thing, which is knowing myself. And I feel like, that was sort of the voice in my head when I got pregnant in 2018 going, "No, you're done. You're done with this. You have to move in another direction." And that voice always whispers if you notice, like, she doesn't shout, she whispers, and so I luckily have had a lot of experience listening to that voice and continue, like, even since in these 5 years, I have done a lot of work to make sure I'm using these tools to listen to that voice and to hear what she's saying and to find some quiet and stillness so that my brain isn't overpowered by the gazillion thoughts that are always going on in our heads, right? Especially as
right,
moms. Oh my gosh, we are constantly managing all these things, being the CEOs of our families.
mhm,
And, so I meditation for me and these other tools give me a space to not stop the thoughts, but really understand, like, create some space between myself, my real self, my soul, and those thoughts, recognizing that they're 2 separate things. And when I can see that separation and that those thoughts are not me, then I can sort of like start opening up a space to really listen for self. What is this voice telling me? And that voice back then was just like, you need to do this. Like, Katie, you can give me all the excuses about you're not this, you're not this, you're not, who are you to do this meditation, podcast and network? And, but you need to do it. And, luckily, thankfully I listen and I'm just like, I have some faith. Let's do this.
Well, and I think that's what you mentioned with the being in our head, constantly listening to the thousands of things that are just cycling through. And the difference between that and what your soul wants or what your heart wants or call it whatever your body wants. And I find that so many women are afraid of meditation or like I don't have time for that. What would you say to those women? Like how do we get them to realize that the importance of this?
So two things. The first is that it is definitely a paradigm shift to understand that slowing down is actually productive. We're sort of obsessed with this very productive life, right? Like we need to accomplish a lot of things. We need to be doing a lot of things. We need to be moving all the time. And those are all great things, right? But our mind and our soul benefit from stillness. And so it's a weird contradiction to this life that we've told ourselves that is a productive and successful life. And so the one thing is to really step out of that limiting belief and allow yourself to be to and schedule it in, like to be have moments of stillness where you're not doing anything, you're not accomplishing, you're not checking things off a list, and that is okay, right? So there's a bit, and even I definitely have this mindset. Like I've definitely continued to have to like unravel this and let it be okay that I'm sitting down on the couch and I'm just sitting and being still right now, right? Like
Right.
not that, there's all these other things I need to do. So that's one thing. But the other thing I would say for everyone, which I'm really passionate about this, is that erase what you think meditation should look like, because meditation can look like a lot of things.
Okay.
We tend to have this visual in our mind that it needs to be me sitting in a cross-legged position, back completely erect, hands in a beautiful position with my fingers touching, super straight. I'm have like a half smile on my face because I'm just in total nirvana bliss, like, incense burning in the background every morning at 5 a.m. And that's not if that's what your meditation practice looks like, that's amazing. That's absolutely not what mine looks like. And so, mine looks like on my very comfy couch, because if I keep my back erect like that for too long, I'm like, oh, that's so uncomfortable, right? There's reasons for all of these kind of body positions in meditation, and that's fine. But like to me, that's a little bit more like advanced, like just to get started, just to get into a habit. It's about finding and making it easy for you. And so, what I tell people is to start with mini moments of mindfulness. I mentioned that term before, and I'll really kind of layer up what it is. To me, mini moments of mindfulness are just opportunities for you to sort of pause.
Okay.
And in that pause opens up a space for you to do this distinction between the thoughts and you, and open up a space to actually listen to what's going on, right? So an example of this is you've dropped off your kids at school or at camp and you're home in the driveway. And before you go in and rush into the house to do the 12 things that you have to do before you need to leave again to go pick up the kids, stop and take 5 conscious breaths. By 5 conscious breaths, I mean that you are counting. Breathe in, breathe out. That's 1. Breathe in, breathe out. That's 2. And first of all, you'd be surprised at how easily your mind gets distracted. So you're like, shoot, what number was I on? Right. But you come back into that and you just take these 5 conscious breaths. Or when you're standing in the shower, instead of thinking of all the things that need to get done for the day, stop, pause, and think about what is in this moment. That's actually why we use the breath so much in meditation, because it brings us to this present moment. It gives you something to focus on that is 100% here right now. So if you're in the shower, instead of all the things going on in your mind on the task list, think about the water hitting your back. Think about how it feels kind of like going down your skin. Think about, how does the temperature feel? And when you start doing that, it's a natural progression to really end up in gratitude because then you start thinking like, wow, not everyone gets a warm shower every day. Not everyone has access to shower. Like, wow, I'm so grateful for this moment. Like, oh my God, my kids have been like at me all day, and just these minutes in the shower just feel glorious, right?
Mhm.
Same thing with sitting in the car taking breaths, like, you just become really like, you open your eyes and things are a little brighter, and you notice the plants outside, you notice the grass, so it's things like that, little mini moments of mindfulness. It doesn't have to be formal, but
Right.
it can be just these moments that allow you to pause and come back into yourself, and that's really what my goal ultimately is with these guided meditations that I'm creating. I'm gonna sell you the benefits of you're gonna feel more calm, you're gonna help to fall asleep, and they're all true and they're all great. I'm
Right.
actually going for the deeper more soulful desire and outcome, which is I want you to use these to get to know yourself better and to
Mm.
really discover your soul so that you can start living a life that is 100% designed by you and not so scripted by everything else around you or even your former self. And that becomes really empowering.
Everything you're talking about right now has me thinking about things that I've recently been learning with. Have you heard of human design?
Yeah, enough to know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was just reading something where they were talking about that is, you know, you've got to live within your body. And I mentioned it earlier and stop with all of the things because we are all, no matter what we do, are pulling in information and we kind of are creating our own situation based on what we're hearing. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, call it what you want, with politics or whatever. It is affecting us and our beliefs when we're constantly hearing these things from the outside. It's
Right.
creating our beliefs rather than us just listening to really what's within us.
Yes. Yes.
And and like you said, with us being able to then go out into the world and do what makes us happy or proud or anything, and how much what can we give to our children if we start
Yes.
doing this now? Like,
Yes. 1,000%. I'm so glad you said that because that's the ripple effect I feel like every single one of us has, and really the ripple effect of what I am here to do with the Women's Meditation Network, because I really believe that with every woman that really feels the impact of these meditations and my intentions behind them. You
mhm,
have a woman who's more willing to be herself very authentically, who's willing to be herself very unapologetically, who's then creating this really beautiful life that in which she is just shining as herself. And when you do that, you are modeling to your kids what it looks like to be yourself. And
mhm,
they're learning what that looks like. So now, and I really believe when you really impact women, you're not just impacting her, you're
right,
impacting her kids, her entire family, every friend that she has, the whole community. Like that we're so interwoven. This is how we are created as these like interwoven beings, right? And so you just make such a big impact. And to your point, I really want to tell this short little story. So I really ultimately believe, and this is really the point of it all, is that our jobs as human beings, not just women, but our jobs as human beings is to know ourselves and to
mhm,
live 100% aligned with who we are, right? And that sounds I could say that so simply, and yet that's a really in our day and age when we've got all this stuff coming at us, that
mm.
is pretty challenging, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
we have all these expectations of what we should be doing, what our life should be like, keeping up with the Joneses, needing to have that body, not for the right reasons, right? Like needing
right.
to have
Oh,
that
yeah,
body because everyone else tells me that that's the body I should have, like
right.
needing to raise my kids this way because that's what everyone tells me how I should do it, right? And and I think when you become a conscious being in this world, you start questioning all those things. And so
Mm,
we can use meditation to come into our deeper selves and really start creating and designing from the ground up. And so I just want to give this beautiful example. So, oh my gosh, 12 years ago. So I'm from Arizona. I'm from the small little
oh,
town in Arizona. 12 years ago, and a lot of my family's still back there. 12 years ago, I take my husband back to Arizona. We have a family reunion on my side, right? And we're in Sedona, Arizona.
Okay.
And I love Sedona, Arizona. My first daughter's name is Sedona, right? And so we're
Oh,
in Sedona, Arizona. And they are very popular for their pink Jeep tours, right? So we
okay.
take a pink Jeep tour, and we have this tour guide named Larry. And Larry is just one of those people who is living in his light. Like, and I say that very pointedly in relation to this conversation, meaning he just knows who he is. He fell in love with Sedona, Arizona, years ago. And so he got work here and does this because he loves showing people the love that he has of this beautiful city, right?
Mhm.
It was a Jeep tour. This was our tour guide. I still follow Larry after all these years on like we became Facebook friends afterwards, me and my husband both, and we just love this guy. He's the coolest guy. And literally just was looking at Facebook, and he has cancer
Oh,
that's been deteriorating him for a couple of years now, and he's near the end. And it struck me so hard
mhm.
how beautiful of a light that man was. And it's not because he went out and accomplished a bunch of things or became successful or had the perfect anything. It was because he was so in line with himself. And
Mhm.
that obvious, and I'm not the only one who felt this. He literally has like hundreds of other people saying, Larry, you were my tour guide one time, and I fell in
Oh.
love with you. And like hundreds of people are telling him this. And so I say that because when we take that job seriously, that job of knowing thyself and living out of that knowing, as hard or as challenging as you think that may be, that's what ends up happening. We just spread light in the most miraculous ways, and you don't have to be anyone. You don't need to like have accomplished anything quote unquote important. You don't have to have been, had the perfect body. You don't have to have raised the perfect kids. You don't or have done motherhood perfectly. Like you don't have to have had the perfect house and all the stature. Like you don't need none of that stuff actually matters. It's about who am I? And am I creating a life that I am 1,000% proud of and in line with, and 100% like, this is what I'm here to do right now in this moment? Constantly changing, constantly evolving. And when you do that, you just shine, and your light shines onto everyone else and impacts everyone else, even though you met them one time for 3 hours on a pink Jeep tour in Sedona, Arizona.
Completely agree. How do we start to do that? I know meditation is where we begin. How do we start to listen and know the difference between the head and what the self is really saying?
Oh, that's such a good question, Courtney. So I call it the difference between the noise and the voice.
Okay.
So knowing the distinction between the noise and the voice, like the noise outside and the voice inside. So we can start by practicing these tools and just understanding that self-awareness is really the goal, right? It's just self-awareness and dropping any sense of judgment or shoulds or expectations. And that's a practice. It is definitely a practice that, we're never perfect at, but we practice that. Like, okay, I'm going to take some time to kind of get to know myself and observe who I am, observe my thoughts, observe when I feel good, when I don't feel good. And so you can use things like, again, meditation. You can use things like journaling. You can use things like being out in nature, going on nature walks, earthing, like getting your feet in the ground barefoot.
Mhm.
There is real science behind that, right? Feeling the energy of the earth, being around plants, being around animals, like cuddling with your pets. There's all of these kind of tools that you could use that allow you to just start asking inquisitive questions about yourself. And
Okay.
when you start doing that, your brain is sort of starting to get wired for asking questions about other things too. Like, why did I get so mad there right there? Why did I just yell at my husband when there's not really anything for me to yell at him for, but I'm just feeling pissed off today. Why am I pissed off? So there's you start doing this like self inquiry, and it just becomes part of I'll speak for myself. I've always been a very self inquisitive person. So the self inquiry has always been there for me. And I've done things to kind of like accentuate it, like journaling, like meditation, like being in nature. All these things help me become better at inquiring what is going on in me and what is going on around me, and why am I this way, and why did I react that way, and why am I feeling this. And the more you practice asking those questions and then listening, What always comes is now, okay, well, what do I do about it? What do I do next? Right. And I
Right.
promise you that if you listen, you'll hear an answer eventually. And you'll just sort of have the knowing, like, "Ah, I know I need to go do that." I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in fights with my husband, and, like, once I've cooled down, I'll be on a walk or whatever, I'm like, "Ugh, I know I need to apologize." And I'm not, one to not apologize, but I'm like, "Ugh, I know I just need to show him love, even though I'm racking up all the reasons why he hasn't shown me love and he needs to show me love for," like, I know I need to what would love do, Katie? Okay, love would wrap my arms around him and just let it all dissolve and just refresh and renew.
Mhm.
So that, and I think the more we practice that, the awareness, the listening, the hearing, the
Mhm.
answers, the hearing of the answers, the hearing getting to know the voice. What does your voice actually sound like? Mine whispers and mine
Okay.
shows up around me, right? She doesn't yell at me. She's not going like, "What the fuck are you doing, Katie? Like, why can't you do this workout? You better hurry up." Like, no, that's my ego, right?
Right.
That's the noise. My voice is like, "Hey, Katie, no, you don't need to work out today. Your body actually really needs a rest. Like and this is not an excuse. Like you really need to rest. And maybe after 3 days of resting, okay, Katie, you've been resting a little too much. Now those are excuses. Get your butt up and start moving. I don't care what it is. Go walk, right? Like all of those
Right.
things.
Right.
So then it becomes about the action. What action am I taking? And that's the muscle to flex. And that's the muscle to practice flexing. I
Okay.
have had experience when I was 18 years old, listening to that voice and having to make really big adult decisions in my life at 18 years old. I mean, technically I'm
Mhm.
an adult, right? But like,
Right.
I mean, some big, like, should I let this, you know, $60,000 scholarship to Arizona State should I let it go because I want to go play softball? And that seems like I feel like I really need to do that, but I'm going to let this whole scholarship go. Like, those questions, and I
Right.
thankfully have parents who are just like, "You know what's right. Like, do what is best for you, and everything will always work out." So I was kind of bred into a position where I was flexing that muscle at an early age of taking action on that voice.
Right.
So, of course, all these years later, when I hear a whisper going, "Hey, drop your entire business that is your livelihood that you've been building for all of these years and go build out a meditation network, which you have no right to do. You have no proof that it's gonna work. Go do it." Of course, I'm gonna listen to her because now I have flexed that muscle. I have listened to her so much and I have taken action on what she has told me. And every single time it's always been to the benefit. Or if I have fallen flat on my face, I'm at least in a different position where I've now learned something and now I can move forward. So
Right.
it is literally the practice of listening, using those tools, hearing and taking action.
Yeah. Yeah. And knowing that one, starting with simple questions, easy, how do I feel about this or this is going to help. And then also understanding that you may fail at something and
You
it
will.
doesn't,
I mean,
yeah,
it's 100% guaranteed, and it's not a failure, right? Like,
right.
it's part of the process. It is part
Right.
of all of this. To me, I remember I've had so many people reflect back to me over the years. I mean, I just highlighted that one kind of moment of making that big decision and transition in my professional life, right? But I've had a lot of moments like that. And what
Mm.
has always been reflected back to me around and the people in my life at those times have been like, "Oh, you're so brave for like going and doing that." I'm like, I cannot comprehend like the pain of staying in something that I know is not for me. Like
Mhm.
that to I the term I use is I have a very low tolerance for unhappiness. So like like to me, I quit my job, to become an entrepreneur back in 14, 15 years ago, right? And it was not pretty. I
Right.
absolutely failed a lot for a long time. Um I look back on that moment and I'm like, but there's no other thing I would have done because to stay in a job that I hated would have been just torture to me. I don't understand how I could do that. Like, there's just
Right.
no other option. And to me, I only got this one life. I only got X amount of more years in this life. Like, what the hell am I doing sitting on the couch? Hell no, I'm playing in the arena and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to get beat up. But damn, I'm going to live big. I'm going to do everything I can to extract what does Walt Whitman say? Like the marrow of life. Like, I'm going to suck the marrow of life and you better be like, "It's on, let's go." Like, there's no other way for me to live this life.
Right. Right. I wish we all would think that way, like really live into what we're meant to do. Because how much more joy would we all have?
I think we do. We are born with this innate knowing and this innate, um, sense of self and living. It is put upon us in our growing up, and I'm not blaming parents, I'm not blaming anything, like, it is just the world and the nature of being human in this
Mhm.
very imperfect human experience, right? But we all have it in us. And if you don't feel that, it is because you have so many layers of expectations and conditioning and, keeping up, and you have so many layers in on you,
Mhm.
and that's what self-inquiry will help dissolve. It will help you get past all those layers and finally figure out like, "Oh, actually, I'm flippin' miserable doing what I've been doing, even though I've been telling myself I'm just fine, and we need and giving myself all the real, quote, unquote, excuses why I need to keep doing it," right? Well,
Right.
none of those real excuses are actually, coming from your heart and your soul. So, yeah, we all have it in us. It's a matter of, are you willing to actually listen and to shift? And it doesn't have to be these big, massive shifts like you see a lot of people do, or what I've done in the past. It can be little tiny little baby steps towards the direction of where you think you might want to go, right? But one
Right.
baby step at a time.
Okay. And speaking about baby steps, if we have someone who this is starting to resonate and they're really ready to start kind of living into who they're meant to be, where would you recommend they start with meditation within your own network? Is
Yeah.
there a certain podcast that you'd recommend they start with?
Yeah. So, out of the 14 podcasts, so you can go to womensmeditationnetwork.com and you can visually see all of the different 14 there. And they're all very different in the sense of they all fulfill something very different or might pertain to you at a certain part season of your life, right?
Okay.
And so I would just suggest somebody goes there to sort of like feel around and like what's calling to me. So we have like sleep meditation for women,
Mhm.
morning meditation for women, daily affirmations, healing meditation for women, meditation for anxiety, mindful meditation. And I'm just saying all of this because like there's just a lot of topics. Meditation for moms, we have finally, that was our most recent one. But that said, Meditation for Women, the original show, has a little bit of everything. So I
Okay.
really like it has some sleep meditations, it has some morning meditations. So that's the one I usually point people to kind of like go get a buffet style of like, what do I feel like listening today? Right. And there's a
Right.
little bit of everything there.
Okay. And you have different amounts of time that each of them
Mhm.
are. Yep.
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 Yeah.
And then what could we do? Say someone's interested in doing this and they're also thinking about their children. Is there anything that you recommend for them to start doing? Like, would this be good for them to do with their children?
100%. Little peeking behind the door. That's actually our next network that we are putting out there,
Ooh,
creating meditations for kids. That
excellent.
said, though, and so that'll be coming up in the next couple of months. That said,
Okay.
though, literally, me and my girls listen to one of my meditations every single night.
Okay.
The meditations obviously are rated PG, but you can scroll through and find ones that I feel could speak to the kid's soul, even if they're just sort of general sleep meditations or just general breathing meditations, right? But you can so many of my meditations are really intentional with a message, and so the title is going to reflect that. Like one in particular, my daughter was being bullied at school, and I wrote this poem, this meditation that of what I wanted to say to her, and it's the kind of the stanza or the chorus, if you will, is sort of like, you don't have to play with someone who makes you feel sad. You don't have to play with someone who makes you feel bad. And so as soon as it was done, when my producer was done with it, I was like playing that for her and she's memorizing the words and she may not quite get it yet, but
Right.
it's so beautiful to be able to have her have that experience. So as serious or as non-serious and mild and joyful and fun as you want it to be, there is literally you could find anything there that would be appropriate for kids.
Okay. And going back to something you mentioned at the very beginning is don't worry so much about how your child is practicing meditation either. They don't have to be sitting still. They might be moving
No.
around and all of that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I actually recommend, for a lot of people, This is the way I've done it. It doesn't mean you have to do it this way, but the way I've introduced meditation to my girls is we've done it at night all these years. And
Mhm.
so when I first started doing it, my oldest was, I didn't have my youngest yet, but I had my oldest and she was 2.5. And I wanted her to like lay down. It's meditation time. Lay down on the bed and listen and no talking. We had all these rules, right? And 99% of the time she was bouncing up and down. I'd be laying on the bed with her and she would just be bouncing all around me, but eventually she would calm down and she
Mhm.
would kind of snuggle with me, right? And so just over the years, she has been trained really to just A, know what a meditation is.
Mhm.
B, she's getting like there's this intrinsic sort of like physical experience, a physiological experience that she's having because like the calming down that her body is experiencing because of the intonation and the music behind it, right? And so and then she eventually, I mean, there's no way that she was really hearing the words that I was saying to her through those meditations all those years
Right.
ago, but now she's 7 and she's getting the words, she's repeating the words back to me like a song later on in the day. So yeah, I mean, drop all expectations of what it should look like for your kids. Try starting with sleepy time because it feels a lot easier in that like you're not like forcing them to sit still and all that stuff. But there's a purpose for it, and it at least introduces the concept to them really really early.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. Well, so I already mentioned womensmeditationnetwork.com, but if obviously you're listening to this on a podcast player, so just whatever podcast player you're using right now, go in the search bar and type in Women's Meditation Network or Meditation for Women, and you will find all of our podcasts there.
Okay. And then if you could leave our listeners with one thing that they could start to do today or this week to help them raise healthier children or just live more intentionally, what would that be?
Well, I would say it all starts with you. And so, yes, a matter of living intentionally would just be I challenge you to do one guided meditation this week and just see how it lands. And understand that your ability to raise healthy children is 100% reliant on can you be the healthiest version of yourself? Can you be the most aligned version of yourself? Because they will see what they will model what they see.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this.
Courtney, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to our podcast. We hope you found this information valuable and can incorporate it into your family's life. Make sure to check out our show notes for all the important links available. Come join us on Facebook at Moms Raising Healthy Humans community page. Also, please check out our wide range of memberships, family monthly focus ideas, challenges, live events, and on-demand and live workouts, meal plans, and so much more. Head to formfitonline.com. And as always, keep moving.